the greatest way to control everyone out there, and they've known this for thousands of years, is to terrify the bejesus out of you, basically. I've gone through this before about adaptation, this Darwinian process of humanity, how we adapt to things we shouldn't adapt to, actually, especially when it's false, you see, but it's for control purposes, and the elite have always known this down through the ages, because even in ancient Rome, there's a fascinating study of ancient Rome, because the emperors would often be deposed, and coups would take place, generals would step in to become the major domo, and they'd stage many events to happen to get the public to cry for government and more governmental power to keep them safe. And that's what we hear all the time now. In fact, everything is about keeping you safe, supposedly, as you become broker and broker, and you're adapting to it all, thinking it's all quite normal. It's amazing, really, with such incredible news today. It's worldwide news from probably thousands of stations, if you add them all up, radio and television and so on, across the whole planet. They're all getting the same information at the same time. And it's easy to keep everyone in step with each other, as we're programmed to accept all this nonsense that we're hit with steadily and steadily. And back in the 90s, I remember being on a radio show, and I was going through what I knew was coming, because I'd watched the militarization of police across the world, back in about 98, I think it was, maybe. Alan Locke in Canada, who was the Attorney General at the time for Canada, single-handedly, basically, put forward a bill, all drafted up, and all the rest of it, being whole hordes of lawyers had already approved this thing, and presented it, which passed without a problem in Parliament, without any question, really. It left everybody puzzled, including the journalists, for a change, because generally they're part of the whole scam, but they weren't in on the know. But the bill was to do with basically a martial law type bill. In 98, people were going along like lazy cats in a hot summer's day. It was so quiet at that time, apart from inflation and all that stuff which is built into the fake money system, and basically couldn't imprison anybody without trial, etc., etc. The whole, and it was a crime omnibus bill that they passed it under, which was a complete anti-terrorist bill. Bill Clinton, of course, did the same thing in the States after he failed to get it through in the 90s, late 90s. And then that very weekend, after it was turned down at the Oklahoma City bombing, in bingo, they passed it in 2 or 3 days later. So you can see when things work in concert like this, that there's big moves way above what you think is the political powers, on the go all the time, involving all these massive government structures and agencies and private agencies all work with government, and all on behest of the guys who really control the planet. Because if you think that the planet is just bashing along with countries knocking each other, you're up a gum tree, as we used to say. It's amazing to me how the people who gobble up all these cop movies, and now it's all terrorist movies, internal terrorist movies, and they gobble it up and always give you the good-looking young guy who's got a wee bit of chip in his shoulder, and he's tough as nails, of course. But they like that because that's a stereotype which turn on the young females. They use the same technique from the James Dean onwards for the singers, the pouting thing, the kind of angry little young guy look. But somehow that appeals to especially young women, and maybe a lot older ones as well, the bad boys, you see. They like bad boys. So, and of course, with all these terrorist movies, it's the same thing. The guy who's got a chip in his shoulder, and they're always ready to fire him, is always the one, he's only the one for the job, you see, when the crisis comes along and he has to deal with it. And that's how they're all made. It's a standard formula in stacks of movies, you see. And if you believed in the movies, which most folk do, unfortunately, today, then their idea of the world around them is very, very scary, because that which turns them on, this segment, is meant to also put in a state of almost sheer panic, but also to make you subservient to the SWAT teams and the militarization. that it's quite fascinating when you string it all together to watch the massive movement that the big boys that wanted a world communistic system. They came up with the idea to use the environment, etc., to get the same thing through on behalf of the multi-trillionaires at the top. You understand the system at the top of environmentalism and communism are multi-trillionaires. The top international moneylenders, etc., the World Bank, the IMF, it's all to do with total control of the whole planet. And for the majority of the public, is to be a socialistic, communistic type collectivist system where you're run from birth to death with all these different experts running your lives for you.